Hello, my name is Venugopal and I'm going to give this presentation on work engagement, emotional exhaustion, and counterproductive work. Well, let's get into the deep dive of the introduction. Work engagement has gained much attention in both the corporate world and academia. Well, the definition of work engagement has been first given by Mr. Khan in the year 1990. Well, the definition follows as this. Work engagement is defined as the physical, cognitive, and emotional involvement of employees in their work roles. Well, it simply means how involved an employee is there in his work. Well, research has shown that work engagement positively influences task performance, organizational commitment, and organization citizenship behavior. Well, which means that in total, the amount of engagement that an employee has towards his work increases his commitment and the growth or the loyalty towards his organization. However, individuals are bounded by limited mental resources. When they overengage and use too much of their mental resources, negative outcomes may be triggered, which means when an employee for in particular towards an organization works in the apt amount and the required amount, the things will be normal. But when an employee uses his complete emotional quantum towards his company or towards his organization, he gets exhausted, which can also lead to negative emotions. Well, individuals with different degrees of conscientious and emotional stability may present distinct emotional outcomes when they engage at work. Thus, we asked, how does an individual's level of work engagement interact with their personality to influence their propensity for emotional exhaustion? And how do these interactions influence subsequent counterproductive behavior? Well, to answer these questions that have triggered a lot of research ideas, we have conducted two studies. The first one is named as Study 1. In the Study 1, we studied in the US uh, and examined how conscientious acts as a personal resource that moderates the effect of work engagement on emotional exhaustion, under the assertion that a negative relationship would emerge for high levels of conscientious rather than low levels. Well, in the study 2 conducted in China, we replicate the findings of study 1. So this is the basic introduction which we want to research are the relationship between work engagement, emotional exhaustion, and the correlating co-productive work. The research goal of our presentation is this. How might work engagement help predict emotional exhaustion? Incorporating the notion, work engagement and emotional exhaustion represent two ends of continuum. We drew on the conservation of resources theory, which examines them as two distinct constructs. To conduct a multitextual two-study investigation in the US and China, we proposed that work engagement would increase emotional exhaustion for individuals who were rated lower in the conscientious personality traits. Moving forward, we have the methods that we have followed for the research methodology. The first one was work engagement and emotional exhaustion study. Data was collected from sample of working employees enrolled in an undergraduate or a graduate business school who were taking an evening organizational behavior course at the University of US. The participants were sent invitations that included the employee survey and an explanation of the survey procedures. This isn't the method that we can explain how the procedure and the survey is going to be conducted. For the purpose of the present study, we utilized those measures related to the current theory and hypothesis, that is, work engagement, emotional exhaustion, and the conscientious personality trait. The sample of study 1 was comprised of a total of 138 employee surveys, yielding a response rate of around 45% from the sampling frame. The final sample included employees from various sectors and sections of jobs, including engineering, software development, administration, production and operations, research and development, accounting and finance, marketing and sales, human resource, and many other fields of engagement. And the second study that is related towards the work engagement and counterproductive behavior relationship that we conducted in China. We collected data from employees and their distinct supervisors in in a private owned Chinese manufacturing firm in an industrial park in the southern China. A total of 324 pairs of matched employee supervisor surveys were later identified and used in the present study, which yielded a response rate of around 64%. Our final sample included employees from a broad cross section of jobs, including sales marketing personnel, finance and accounting personnel, computing technicians, operations marketing personnel, research and development scientists, engineers, human resource personnel, administrative personnel, and others, such as company lawyers, security personnel, stock clerks. Of the respondent, 56% were male, and the average age of them was 30 years. Coming to the figures and results based on our investigation and the methods that we have followed, we can see the figures which deal the conscientious and the work engagement in one box and emotional stability versus the emotional exhaustion on the other. Well, in the second figure, we can see a graph relating to the lower work engagement and higher work engagement on the x axis, on the horizontal axis, and the emotional exhaustion on the vertical axis, which we can understand and infer from the graph that the lower engagement caused higher emotional exhaustion, whereas the higher work engagement has caused a lower emotional exhaustion. Thus, in two different consciousness, that is the low and the higher ones, we can see two different methods and ways of projections of the results. On the other hand, we can see the lower engagement, lower work engagement, and the higher work engagement on the horizontal axis, and the emotional exhaustion on the vertical axis. So, finally, the construct of engagement may not be theoretically antipode of emotional exhaustion. Instead, engagement can lead to emotional exhaustion since individuals may deplete their mental and cognitive resources, which they actively engage while they are working. Furthermore, by exploring the moderating effect of individual differences on the work stability, on the work engagement to exhaustion relationship, we found out that conscientious and emotional stability are both important individual traits to consider as boundary conditions in the theory of work engagement. Since low conscientious individuals are likely to assess their work tasks efficiently, they may have a harder time dealing with stress and other job demands. When they over engage at work, the effect of conscientious or emotional exhaustion may be amplified when an individual is emotionally unstable, exhibiting frustration and a lot more negative emotions. Managers should be aware of some of the negative consequences that can arise from individual differences when devising work engagement interventions that are meant to be beneficial. So the main person who was more related and more uh, responsible for an individual or an employee's outcome is the manager. So the manager must be conscious about the personality and the personal behavior of that particular employee and deal with the circumstances that will be coming out from that individual person. Well, understanding individual psychological effect differences may now allow them to make the necessary modifications to work to such work engagement programs so that the positive benefits can be fully realized. Well, it completely determines that the ultimate fruits of knowing this theory and reaping the benefit out of it is completely dependent on the managers and their execution levels. Conservation of resources theorists have suggested that companies create resources, caravans, or an employee marketplace wherein individuals can share needed resources and obtain organizational support so that they can consistently experience resource gain at a higher rate than resource losses. Such shared resources could prove critical for those with the greatest need For example, including an employee has a positive emotional continuum with the company or the organization, the efficiency towards his work and involvement in the work is directly proportional. So, in a short word or in the simplified manner, if an employee has a good emotional continuum with the organization, his involvement in the company activities is very proportional. Well, when at the stage of an employee, the involvement is high and very good, not leading to much exhaustion of his mental behavior, the organization has good chances to grow and also reap the benefits out of the employee, and which can lead or which can bring out a win-win situation where the organization has been can get succeeded in its organizational goals, and also the individual does his part in achieving his individual goals, thus which makes it as a win-win situation. But on the contrary, if the person or the individual is having a negative emotional cycle towards the organization, it can lead towards a drastic loss for the company in terms of work culture, and which can also affect other employees in the company.